Good morning. Today we're going to be talking about this movie God Calling, which is currently on Netflix. It came out on Netflix around the end of March. That's when I watched it, but it came out originally in Nigeria in 2018. So I was excited about the opportunity to watch the movie because I didn't even hear about it when it came out in Nigeria. The actors and actresses in this movie are Onyeka Onwenu and Kem Owo, who act in the role of Francis's parents, Ademola Adedoyin, who acts in the role of the angel, Richard Mofe Damijo, and Tina Mba, who acts in the role of Sade's parents, Zainab Balogo, who acts in the role of Sade, and Zainab Balogo was also in this movie Sylvia, which you can also find on Netflix. It's a great movie, very different. So please watch it. Let's talk about that movie. Very different. And Karibi Fubara, who acts in the role of Francis. It's rated a TVMA for mature audience only, and the reason why I think they rated it that way is because there is they said it's smoking as well as suicide, but also they forgot to add drug use. Okay, so the genre of this movie is Nollywood. It falls within the faith and spirituality genre. 96% of Google users who watched the movie rated it highly, while 7.7% of it was rated at 7.7% on IMDb, which is a high rating if you want my honest opinion for a foreign film. So that's almost a B, you know. The plot of this movie is the loss of a child plunges Sade into a suicidal depression, but her suffering leads to faith with a little assistance from modern technology. So that's what they say. Now, what do I say? What's the plot of the movie? So the movie basically, it's about this lady. Her name is Sade, and she is someone who has been struggling with drug addiction, because there are things missing in her life and she's using drugs to cover it. Her family is very aware that she is a drug user, but it's like an open secret. While her husband is unaware, her husband was under the impression that she had let go of the drug use ages ago. So she loses her daughter as a result of her negligence, and the guilt of losing her daughter pushes her to want to commit suicide. But she makes a prayer before she takes that plunge, and God shows that all the time He's been calling her, He really does have work for her to do. So now the question is, how does she heal from this loss? How does she forgive herself for this thing that happened to her daughter, you know? And how does she transform her life, and in the process transform her family's life? So Sade's relationship with God and the church is one that is filled of, you know, a lot of anger and resentment that Sade has because of what she has seen in the church, and because of probably how she has seen her family deal with the church. Her father is dealing with a particular trauma that occurred during the war, and this made him turn his back on the church. And of course Sade grew up with all of this too, so she's dealing with all of this. So now she has to tell her family, you know, you need to stop buying the church. I am going to leave all this behind to follow God and work in the missionary work. And the Lord is telling me to go to the eastern part of the country to start this work. Now, this is a very interesting decision because her husband, who loves her so much, had left his family to cleave to her and cut off all ties with his eastern side, you know, his Igbo. And so now it has to lead to some forgiveness on that side and some redemption on that side for them to walk on this journey. So I love this movie because it addressed so many themes. It talked about drug use and drug addiction, even managing drug use. It talked about redemption and grace. It talked about missionary work, forgiving oneself, grieving a loss, suicide. And then it also talked about, you know, how do you kind of correct a mistake that was made, you know. And you know, for example, I talked about Francis and her family. For them to move forward in this missionary work, the family had to come together and be in agreement, because if they never agreed, that missionary work wouldn't have worked. So I love this movie. Actually, I rate it a 4. I'm going to rate it a 4.5 out of 5. I think they did a great job. The cinematography was on point. That shot that they took of the plunging from the bridge was so beautifully done. And there's so many areas. Even the burning and the kitchen scene was so beautifully done. Was well done. The only thing the only issue I really have with this movie is that, the themes that were discussed are one that we see constantly played within the Christian faith. And yes, it's a beautiful movie for someone who is already within the faith to watch, because it's an assurance of God's grace that is always with us. Regardless of how and what happens in our life, we have God's approval, we have God's grace. But for someone who is who is trying to decide whether they should become a Christian or not, I don't think this movie has enough push for that decision to take place. And that's my honest opinion. So watch it, let me know what you think. Till next time, take care and ciao.